created by Cable for Canadians.
Hi, welcome to a very special edition of Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall is one of Canada's most admired and respected political figures. The son of politically active parents from a Mennonite background, Wall developed an early and abiding love of politics. He's the married father of 3. He likes to coach in his community, and he loves muscle cars. He joins me now to talk all about life beyond politics. Premier Brad Wall, it is wonderful to have you here. Thank you for taking the time.
That's great to be on the show. Thank you.
So you grew up in a fairly conservative Mennonite family. Mm-hmm. What was your childhood like? And was it a fun time? You described yourself once as being like the Kennedys without the party.
Well, as you know, to say that we were Mennonite, I mean, it really means 2 things in terms of the Canadian context.
Okay.
It describes a culture, first of all, and a language, Plautdietsch, and it also describes a faith. And so we weren't necessarily brought up in terms of in a Mennonite church, although we attended one later on. But there's a certain culture, I guess what we sometimes would call a low German culture that I grew up in. It was fantastic. It was on both sides, my mom and my dad's side, and typical of Canadians who came from all parts of the world and brought a little bit of what existed before to Canada, to their homes. I mean, I benefited from that, and so mom and dad were fluent and still are fluent in both, obviously English and in what we call Low German or Plautdietsch, which meant them, being able to just switch to another language when there was some secret they wanted to keep from my brother and I. But it was a great upbringing, absolutely. My dad was basically a small business person for all of his life, and mom did a little bit of that, but was an administrator was an administrative assistant at the high school for most of my childhood anyway, and it was a great place to grow up, and it's a great place to live today. That's where Tammy and I are raising our family today in Swift.
It must be really neat to actually be raising your own family in the same place that you were raised, where you were raised as well. I think that there's got to be that continuity has got to be pretty special. It is.
We're actually, the house we're in now is just around the corner from the first house I remember. We left that house on the street where we were living today and when I was in about grade 2. But I remember it. So it's kind of strange to teach your kids how to ride their bike on the same street you learned how to ride your bike. And Swift-Current is a great place, like so many other communities in the country, to raise a family. And my wife's from Prince Albert, which of course is, for those who aren't that familiar with Saskatchewan, obviously the iconic the icons of the province, typically in terms of our geography, are the prairies and the plains. But 2/3 of the province is shield and forest and lakes, 100,000 lakes. My wife Tammy grew up in that part of Saskatchewan in Prince Albert, and so when we moved to Swift-Current, I had to kind of tell her that there was actually more trees than there turned out to be. She had figured it out, but so it's a bit new for her. But we're both from Saskatchewan originally, and we're happy with our lives in Swift-Current.
How did your mom and dad meet? Did they ever tell you?
Yeah, well, we just celebrated their 50th anniversary actually here at the end of last year, and they met. I don't know actually how they met. I think they would have met at school, frankly.
Okay, but here though, they didn't meet like somewhere else and then come to Canada.
Oh no,
they were here,
no, because even my grandfather had come was born in Steinbach, Manitoba, on my dad's side.
Right.
And I think the same is true for my mom's folks as well. So they were, we have several generations obviously here, and I think actually both sides of the family can go back to that area of that Altona Steinbach area, Manitoba, and then move to southwest Saskatchewan, where a number of people of that low German extraction settled right around Swift-Current.
Sure.
Communities like Weinmark and Blumenhof and Blumenort, places like that. And I think they met at school actually. My dad grew up in a small town south of Swift-Current called Rhineland, and my mom's family originally came from that same area. And I think they would have met at school.
Yeah.
That's strange. We had a 50th anniversary, and I'm thinking they asked the question.
That's the thing with parents, though. You don't often ask those types of questions. I think you may more of your grandparents.
Yeah.
But of your own parents, we tend not to ask those types of questions.
Too many of those, you're right about it. And so we lose out on great vignettes.
Right.
And great sort of strains of our own heritage. I remember being a bit frustrated at my Grandpa Wall's funeral at the time when the family was gathering before the funeral. That's when I was hearing from my uncles and even my dad so many stories of Grandpa that I wish I could have known about when he was still alive.
Sure.
To talk to him about. One in particular I actually referenced in my maiden speech in the legislature was that he was an intensely honest man, and he had gone. He liked to do woodworking in his shop after he'd retired. He'd gone downtown in Swift Current, parked his car, plugged the meter, went into the store, the hardware store, got what he needed, came back out and saw the meter had expired. So he drove to City Hall and he stood in line and said, I need to pay my fine. And they said, well, where's your ticket? And he said, well, I didn't get a ticket, but I broke the law, so I'd like to. And he wouldn't leave until they let him
You're kidding.
square up. Yeah. Pretty
wow.
Interesting story to tell in your maiden speech, and a reminder of how important maybe that kind of approach to life might be.
Absolutely.
And how it avails much even today. But anyway, unfortunately, as you point out, we too often hear about those stories when we can't talk to them about it anymore.
Yeah. I know even with my own grandmother that I always try to ask her questions about what she was like as a little girl, because you find out stuff about the people that you care the most about, but that you have assumptions about too. You just assume that they've always been like they are now.
That's right.
I found out she was a terrible troublemaker, and so I think it is fun to figure it out. But what were you like as a kid?
I was a terrible troublemaker.
Were you?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
No?
obviously, I'm not going to be a very
forthcoming,
unbiased source here.
Okay.
I think I got into trouble. We were actually just talking this morning about a few pranks, but nothing more than anybody, and nothing more than usual, I would say. But no, our house was fun enough. We didn't have to cause any artificial fun usually.
Why was your house fun enough?
My folks have a great sense of humor. My dad especially. He's kind of, there was a lot of fun in our house, a lot of laughing.
Did you know what you wanted to be? Did you have one of those dreams, like kids dream of being an astronaut or a cowboy?
I've been interested in politics for a disturbingly long period of time.
Okay.
I remember when I first I guess tweaked a little bit was when I think it would have been about grade 5 or 6. I came home and my dad was in the evening. My dad was he was fairly animated in watching this TV program, not quite yelling at the TV, but close.
Okay.
And he doesn't really get animated. Still to this day, he's pretty even-keeled, and so I remember kind of sidling up and wondering what's got Dad this upset. And he was watching the news. It wasn't a hockey game, it wasn't sports, he was watching the news. And there was something that the then Trudeau government had done that had him upset. And so it was the first real discussion I had. I got to talk to, I asked him a little bit about why and what, and ever since then I have had an interest in politics. That's probably not the moment, but it's as close I can come to identifying a moment in time. And then ever since then I've been kind of interested to the point where when I desperately wanted the game Paul Economy. Are you familiar with this game? It was a uniquely Canadian political game, a board game.
Okay.
Yeah, if your friends.
How old were you when
Well, like in grade 7 or 8. It's the kind of thing as if your friends knew you played it, they wouldn't
be friends with you
either to beat
anymore?
you up or not talk to you anymore at school. But we played it as a family.
Still in existence?
You know what? Maybe through this we'll find out.
Yeah.
Because I think I've mentioned it in a few other places, and others have come forward. Other, self-proclaimed political nerds have come forward and said, "Yeah, I had that game too." We played it. It was a political economy, a game of Canadian political economy, and so you had to form a government. Typically, elections I think were caused by actually an effective dice roll. Ironically enough. And then there was also the chance to build businesses, or to be either on the government side of the equation or the business side of the equation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So pretty pathetic.
Well, that's everyone's perspective. Everyone has their own
we played Monopoly and Risk too, but there was always Paul Economy. Yeah. And you know what? I don't think we have the game anymore. I've asked Mom and Dad, and I don't think we can find it. So maybe we'll maybe through CPAC
we'll have some viewers who can let us know. Now, were you shaped by your dad's approach to politics, or even your mom's? But it sounds like it was your dad who was the one who was particularly.
Mom too, and I think so. I mean, the views certainly. Although there was always an encouragement to explore and come to my own conclusions about things. But I'd like to think that I was, because his approach would be, and he served on. I think he was 5 terms on city council and on the school board and those sorts of things, and so his approach was generally a fairly positive one. Sometimes in politics we he kind of can arc towards the negative. Sometimes not even purposely. Sometimes it just happens because of the fact that we're separated by the tradition of two saber lengths or whatever. That we have an opposition in a government for whatever reason. We can head down that road. And his default position was generally always to make a case for something or work towards something for positive reasons.
Right.
And I'd like to think that is an influence on me, although probably it should be more of an influence on me than it is.
When did you decide that you were actually going to pursue politics in a real sort of way? I guess when you went to university and you studied it.
Yeah, I took it. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, but not because I wanted to be a lawyer, but because I thought as a very young person that was the best way to get into politics.
Okay. I think a lot of people still do that.
I think that's probably the case. I was involved in student politics right away in junior high and high school, and then in university and campus politics, and so it's an interest that's never really left me. And I can't say, I think I wanted to be elected. I know that I wanted to represent Swift Current at some level of government at a very young age. At least I thought that. I don't know if it was a subconscious thing to work towards that or not, but I was always interested in politics.
When did you fall off the legal bandwagon? When did you decide that the law was not for you? The study of the law. Yeah,
I never really did. Maybe the bandwagon just left me because I finished my degree, my 4-year degree, and got a great offer to come and work in Ottawa. And again, for a sort of a political junkie, that's a pretty good place to be. And grabbed it, worked for my member of parliament, a gentleman by the name of Geoff Wilson, who's a friend to this day. And, it was one that never really got back. Then I went back to Saskatchewan. Again, I worked in government and, got closer and closer to getting married, and then got married, and you know how things work. I never went back to school.
Let's talk about the getting married part. And the part before that, you met your wife, Tammy, at university.
I did.
She was studying civil engineering.
Right.
And I read somewhere a quote from you that said something along the lines of, "And the pursuit began."
Yeah.
And I wondered who pursued whom.
That was probably me.
Okay.
Yeah, I was probably doing the pursuing. And by the way, if you're in art, I was an art student, obviously. I was thinking public admin. I mean, engineers really don't have a lot of time for dating.
Okay.
They don't have as much time, at least as I did.
Was that her excuse to you?
No,
that she didn't have time to date you?
She was always kinder than that, but she could have certainly used that. But it was probably me that was pursuing.
Okay. How did you know? I mean, tell me about that first time that you guys saw each other. Was it?
I don't think she saw me. I think I saw her first, which probably speaks to why I was doing the pursuing. She was playing, she was throwing a football around in the bowl, what we call the bowl at the U of S. We both were living in residence. Obviously, although it's co-ed now, I think, obviously, I was in men's residence and she was in women's residence. She was throwing the football around, and I saw her, and I can't explain things, much more than that. I can't, or at least I can't really find the words to describe what I thought or what I knew at that moment. I just thought, at that point in my life, I think I would like to date that girl.
Did she have any idea about your political inclinations when she
probably soon after? Yeah, I was probably incessant in my talk about politics, and so to the extent that she hung in there with me, I'm forever grateful, because I probably started talking about it as soon as we got past some initial hellos. I would have been insufferable.
You would have been.
Yeah, would have been. Maybe I'm presuming that. It's a good thing she's not here to correct my tense.
She must have not had any trouble with it. Is she interested in politics herself?
Obviously was at that point less than I was, but she's developed a real interest in it, and she's a great sounding board, my best sounding board, sort of the greatest source of advice, thank goodness. And she's interested in it, but also she has many other interests. And she's been she's owned and operated her own business successfully, and she's involved in music. She's the president of our music festival in our community, and very much been involved in music. And that's it's great. It's perfect for this job, that you can go home and not, frankly, talk about potash or politics and talk about anything else. But
I think that's one of the keys of having a spouse who does have outside interests, because politics can be so all-consuming that it really can consume your family too. And so if you have that ability to go home and talk about different things, then you do have the best of both worlds.
I think that's one of the biggest dangers of political life. The biggest threats to family life is the fact that it is, as you're exactly right, it can be all-consuming. And especially I've noticed, and we've only been government for 3 years, but I was leader of the opposition for a time before that, and you have bad days or maybe bad weeks, and it's hard not to stop kind of talking about them, basically sort of working through that, even when you're not at work anymore. Right. And that's not necessarily the healthiest thing for a home life. So you're right, something we have to be vigilant about, and it's nice that there's something other things to talk about at home than politics.
You have 3 children. How have you both managed to create the balance that's necessary to run a household, have successful kids that are, kids that are happy at least, and have a successful marriage, while also living in 2 different places? You're now in Regina a lot, and home is Swift Current. How have you managed to make that work?
Commuting is important. I try to get home as much as possible, and I don't have a permanent residence in Regina for that reason. And this is not a fault of those who make that choice, wherever their capital happens to be. It's just for us, I thought, if I have more incentive to get home, it's only 2 hours and maybe a bit to get home on a twin highway, and it's worked out better than I thought. I asked for a lot of advice from elected individuals about the notion of getting into politics when your family was young, because our kids were very young.
How old were they?
Faithy was just turning 1 about a week after we got elected.
Oh my gosh.
By that I got elected the first time, and so the other kids would have been 5 and 3, Megan 5 and Coulter about 3, very young. And so a lot of I got great advice. I talked to 2 individual dads who were also MLAs who said the same thing, which was kind of gratifying. It kind of built my confidence that they might be onto something. They said the same thing independent of each other, not knowing that I had talked to both, and that was this, that you're not going to get to everything, to every ball game, to every practice. You're just not going to do it, but you'll get to more than you think you will if you make a point of it. And no matter your vocation or your avocation in life, it will always compete with family.
Right.
So it's a question of sort of metering that competition, and they both said effectively the same thing, and it's borne out to be pretty prescient, I think, advice, and that's what we've tried to do imperfectly. We've made mistakes, and then Tammy's been great. Tammy's just stalwart, and we're blessed with great kids who have great perspective and give me perspective. They're
whether you want it or not.
Yeah, it's always great. I remember shortly after we were getting elected, I'd been in Regina for a couple of days, longer than usual, and I came home and walked in the front door and started giving orders. There's too many onions in that chili, and Coulter, you haven't done your homework, and Megan, have you practiced piano? And I just walked in, and Megan kind of put down her pen, and she said, she's our oldest, and she said, Dad, when you're in this house, you're not the premier.
Oh.
So you get good perspective.
Yes, you do. You got shot down.
Perfect. Yeah. I think they may have been cheering when she said that.
I'm sure there might have been. It might have been led by her mother.
I may be trying to cleanse my memory. Yeah, it might have been. Especially after the onion remark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think that when kids are really little, excuse me, and you embark on any kind of a career change, but especially on something that involves your kids too, because inevitably your kids are involved in your political life just because it's the public life. But it's so much easier when they're little. They just kind of adapt.
Yeah.
They're great adapters.
It's probably like any change in a young family. If you move to another place, or any new job is begun by a mom or a dad, and it's caused a relocation, it's true then as well. When the kids are young, there's going to be the adapting, I think, is that much easier, or at least by the time they get to be of an age where they can kind of think back, they can't really remember the transition, even though the moms and dads probably worry about it a lot. And
worry that you've ruined their lives and such.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You have that certain amount of concern and guilt.
Do you still have a dog?
We do. We have a different dog. We started politics with Oreo. Okay. Both dogs were adopted at our local shelter. We lost Oreo, I guess it would have been about 6 years ago, and now we have a neurotic border collie named Zeke that we also adopted, who's been with us for some time.
Is neurotic, is that his primary character trait?
Well, it is. And he's a lot more sedate than he used to be, and calmer. But he's a border collie, so he's pretty excited all the time, I think Tammy really worked on socializing him, but he's a great dog, great family pet.
Yeah. Do you still coach for your kids' teams and stuff?
Well, not Coulter's anymore because he's moved on beyond minor football.
Okay.
I'm still coaching minor football.
Right.
He did again this year, but he, for the first year in 4, was not in minor football. He's now taking the next level. He's playing for now high school football.
Great.
And so, but I still coached. It's great therapy, and I love it.
Yeah, and are you able to do it with your schedule? Like it still works out?
Yeah, the staff in Regina love the fact that I coach.
Oh, why? Because they know they get a night off?
No, and actually, if you can sense some sarcasm, and,
okay.
I'm not sure they do or they don't, but they're very accommodating,
right.
and they know it's just kind of a priority. It works out really good. Our minor season is short; it's about 6 or 7 weeks. And we practice 2 days a week, and then we play on Sundays. And Sundays I'm typically home anyway. We kind of play after church is when the games are, and practice. I might not get to all of them. I'm an assistant coach. I couldn't be a head coach because I'm not that dependable in terms of being there.
Sporting.
That's right. So it's usually but it works out just fine. And I think to the extent that we in politics, or maybe in any walk, that we take the time to do some of the other things like that, we're going to get a better perspective for our job. I've often said I get my best advice at things like that, or at the produce section at Safeway.
Yeah.
It's just.
Do you mind that though? Do you mind the fact that people are always going to come up to you when you're just trying to be yourself or be there for your family and say...
when I'm with it's strangely, if I'm shopping on my own, if I'm getting groceries on my own, that's when it usually happens. But if I'm with the kid, we're with the kids. And that's why Swift Current's been so great. We're so blessed to live in that community. People don't, generally speaking, or they might come up and say, "Hey, I got a thing in healthcare I want to talk to you about, but I'll phone your constituency."
Oh, okay. So they're respectful.
Yeah, it's been great.
Right.
To the point where I'm almost sometimes saying, "No, let's talk now. What's the thing you're concerned about?" Yeah. But typically, when we're with the family, people are just great that way. Yeah. So we appreciate that very much. Not just in Swift Current, but it's really true around the province.
Yeah. So I understand that you're interested in muscle cars.
Yes.
Is this real? This is
real. My first car was a 1966 Charger, Dodge Charger, which was the first year that Dodge ever made a Charger, and bought it for my brother. It was a beautiful car, and I sold it for some ridiculously low price. And I had a 66 Galaxy growing up, hardtop, and a 73 Challenger, which I really wish I had still, but we sold them all for ridiculously low prices.
And are these things that you regret?
Yeah. Okay. But thanks for reminding
me that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I have a 67 Dodge Coronet, which isn't quite as good as a Charger or Challenger, but it's a neat little car. And purists out there would say, well, really not a classic Mopar muscle car, but it's a passion. I love them. We also have a 1970 Chrysler Newport Custom convertible.
Wow.
Which has one area code on the front and one area code on the trunk, I think, and it needs a lot of love. It's not in great shape.
And are you the one who loves the cars? Do you care for them yourself? Like, do you restore them, or do you just
I'm not very good. I'm not very mechanical. I do a little bit of stuff.
Right.
I couldn't look at a modern engine and make any sense of it with the computers and the chips. But with an old V8, it's great to change my own oil and try to get it going when it isn't going, and it's great fun. So it's a 67 Dodge Coronet, but for the record, Dad Tammy calls it a 1967 midlife crisis. Although I don't think Dodge ever made that model, but
I'm sure. Do your kids help you with your midlife crisis?
No, they don't. Coulter likes. We'll go for. We just put a stereo in it this spring, and it's fun to go for a spin. Actually, all the kids are like. Yeah.
Are they loud?
In it.
Is it loud?
It's dual exhaust. It's not, it's not bylaw breaking loud, but it's
right. You
loud.
shouldn't do that.
That would be terrible.
Yeah.
That would be terrible.
So, your son Coulter likes AC/DC.
He does. Well, he's moved on. He still does. He likes harder rock, and it's really what got him into music, because he's into music in a big way now.
Right. Guitar.
Guitar. But he's moved on to the blues. He loves the blues. Yeah, and so if it's John Mayer or Buddy Guy, or he was mad at me, not mad at me, but frustrated because we were reading in the Regina Leader Post a review of a B.B. King show. B.B. King had come to Regina, and I'd completely missed it. Otherwise, we would have dragged him, and probably the other kids would have wanted to have come too. But that's what he's into. At grade, he's in grade 10 now. That's
got to be really reassuring as a parent to know that your kid's listening to normal music.
Fantastic, And Megan really likes all kinds too, but classical specifically.
Really?
Faith is more into the more pop stuff. She's the youngest.
And how
She's a
old
big
is
Taylor
she
Swift
now?
fan. Faith is Faith turned 11.
And is she into Justin Bieber?
Sorry, Faith turned 12 in September. Yeah.
Okay. Is she into Justin Bieber?
Not much, no. Taylor Swift.
Okay.
She's a huge Taylor Swift fan.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed at how kids now are just so connected to these artists who are in fact a lot older than they are in most cases, but their music is just everything to them.
It is for them too. You know, they all have their interests, and Faith plays saxophone, and they all take piano lessons except for Coulter. He's on the guitar now exclusively. And Megan took cello for a while but ran out of time here in grade 12. She wants to focus on her studies, and she's got a job, so she wants to pick that up again someday. Yeah. And you cook. Is this, like, are you a help around the house, or are you just kind of... Once again, I'm happy that I'm here to answer the question without Tammy, because, you know, I frankly not the help I could be on other things. But we do like to cook together.
Sure.
We like to try new things.
And if you had a chance to go do something on a night where there was no politics involved, what do you guys typically do?
You know, we like to go to a movie. We like to go out for dinner. We travel really well together, so we're looking forward to the point in our lives when we'll be able to do more of that. But we've always really traveled well together. We both like to see historical sites. We both enjoy museums. We both enjoy seeing other places. So we don't always have a lot of time because of life is what it is at this stage to do that. But you know, we really enjoy traveling together.
Your premiership has been very successful. You have earned a lot of recognition across the country because of it, and you've been mentioned as someone who may one day run for federal office, look at being Prime Minister. Is that something that you really would consider?
No.
Really?
No. You know, it's funny. We were talking a little bit about this just as the potash issue was sort of wrapping up and before the break. It's strange. I know this isn't the premise. This is not your premise. But what I hear when I hear that question, what's implied, although not meant, is there's a better job than the one you have.
Yeah.
You must be an aspirant to this other job because it's the. And I don't see that. I don't know of another. It isn't just sort of the stuff of rhetoric for me to say, I don't know of another job that's better than the one I have in politics. There's some other things maybe that we can pursue when this is over, or when the people of the province have asked me to pursue some other career. Yeah. But it's strange. I just don't, necessarily see that it follows that there's something better in politics than what I'm able to do right now, what I have truly an honor to do right now. So the answer is no. If
you could do one thing then, that's totally, just one thing you've always wanted to do, what would it be? After this, of course.
Well, I think Gary Dewar has ruined this for me, because I'm not sure they'll have another Prairie Premier anytime soon, or former Premier become the ambassador to the United States. But that would be...
start lobbying for it right now.
Well, and I guess that's what we're doing.
Yeah, good.
But here's some non sequiturs, though. I also think to be a voiceover guy for Disney would be pretty fantastic, although the problem is I'm not very good at any voices, so that's limiting.
Why Disney?
Well, or any
voiceover.
I think wouldn't voiceovers be a lot of fun? You just sort of, it doesn't matter.
Do you mean like in a galaxy far
and
away?
Runners,
kind of?
You go into work. No, like voiceovers, different voices, for.
Oh, okay. So you want to be like Donald Duck? You mean kind of?
Well, maybe not Donald Duck.
That kind of.
Sure, if I could do Donald Duck, yeah.
Okay.
Or something involved in football is a passion of mine.
Sure.
Commissioner of the CFL, maybe, I don't know.
Perfect. Well, that's
Larry
great.
Smith kind of went the other way, right? He went from that to now he's looking at politics.
Right. Yeah. So you'd rather go the other course. Okay. All right. Well, we'll watch and we'll see where it all ends up. Thank you so much. It's just been a real pleasure to chat with you. I've really enjoyed it, and I appreciate that you would take the time in your schedule to be here.
Well, I've enjoyed it too. Thank you very much.